I want to talk to you about changing your behavior, okay? And because you guys are all in the business both of changing your own behavior and, more importantly, changing everybody else's behavior around you. So how are you going to do that? Now, in order to think about that, I want to start by thinking a little bit about my own behavior change. So while I may not have a triathlete's body, I think I'm all right. But I wasn't always all right. So early in my career, I did the academic thing, and that meant sitting in front of my computer for long hours and eating lots of food. And so I woke up one day and realized I was a lot heavier than I ought to be, and it was time to make a change. Now, when I sat down to make a change, I realized it wasn't just about trying to get to a particular weight. I really needed to fundamentally change the way I was eating. So I actually went to a plant-based diet, primarily so that I just had to completely change everything that I was eating. And I had to really plan for that, which meant cooking in a different way and thinking about specifically how was I going to organize the meals. I had to have plans for things like buffet lines, which are the bane of anyone who wants to change their behavior. And you had to have a plan for that in advance, things like finding the smallest plate you can find and getting to that line later, and we'll talk about that. So I had to be ready for the temptations that were going to be in my path. I had to change the environment. I had this love affair with the single-serving carton of Ben & Jerry's ice cream. You know, those are like a pint, right? You've probably seen those. What happens is you pull it out with a spoon and you sit down to eat, and then you get down to halfway, take one more spoonful past halfway, and then it's simply impolite to stick it back in the freezer. So you eat the rest of it. Then you look at the so-called nutrition information, realize you've eaten more calories than some small nations get in an entire week. Right? So I had to change that environment. I made the remarkable discovery that you can't eat an ice cream that isn't in your freezer. Okay? So I had to make that change, and I had to engage with people around me. I had to hang out with people who ate better. I had to hang out with people who were going to exercise, because it turns out that the people around you are a tremendous influence on your behavior. So it was really a comprehensive plan. And I want to point out two things with this. The first is that the secret to something like weight loss is actually no secret. Everyone knows what you're supposed to do. You got to take in fewer calories than you're burning. We know that formula. It isn't about information. One of the fundamental things to realize if you're going to change your own behavior, if you're going to change the behavior of other people, is that you cannot tell people anything that will change their behavior just by the information you give them. How do we know this? I want you all to think about our cultural top 10 list. Okay, if you look at the Judeo-Christian culture, our top 10 list is the 10 Commandments. Now I want you to excise a couple of them that have to do with follow this religion rather than that religion. And every single one of them, the rest of them, is about resolving the trade-off between the thing that feels good in the short term and the thing that's desirable in the long term, to resolve that trade-off in favor of the long term. Right? That person who just really annoyed you, don't kill him. That really beautiful thing somebody else owns, don't steal it. That very attractive spouse of the person living next door, leave him or her alone. Now, I want to point out to you that the deity came down and said these things to people, and yet manifestly everyone still does them. What that means is that if a God can tell you, don't do this, and you still do it, who do you think any one of you are to just tell people a piece of information and think that is going to have any influence whatsoever on someone else's behavior? It is not. So how are we going to change people's behavior? Well, there are 5 things you need to do. And today what I want you to do is to think about those 5 things. To help you think about those 5 things, if you open up that little bag you got, there is a sheet of paper in there that lists the 5 things I'm going to talk about in columns. And what you're going to do is take notes on that today. And those notes are going to be to take information from each of the speakers and think about how you are going to implement that for yourself and in your organizations. Now, here are the 5 things. The first of them is the goals that you have. Most of us fail in our attempts to change our behavior from the moment that we set our goals. And we fail in 2 ways. The first way that we fail is that we set negative goals rather than positive ones. That is, we focus on what we're not going to do. I'm going to eat less. I'm going to stop smoking. I'm going to quit biting my nails. The problem with not doing things is that we ultimately want to create habits to do the right thing. Habits are actually memories. They're part of your memory system, and you can't learn not to do something. Memory doesn't kick in when you're not doing something. It only kicks in when you're doing something. So you have to reframe what you're doing positively. So when I decided to change the way I was eating, it was a matter of changing the foods I was eating in order to do something positive. That's the first thing you need to do. And the second thing you need to do is to focus not on the outcome you desire, but on the process for living your life. I knew someone a long time ago. She was a little bit overweight, and she wanted her daughter was getting married. She wanted to be a thin mother of the bride. And I'll be darned if she didn't basically starve herself for the 6 months before the wedding. And she was a thin mother of the bride, but she was not a thin mother-in-law. Because immediately after that outcome, she went back to eating the way that she was eating before. She did not integrate a set of behaviors into the process of living her life. And that's what we need to do. Wellness is about the daily activities that you carry out that lead to the long-term goal of being well. It is not about any particular outcome that you're trying to achieve. So we got to nail the goals, positive goals that are focused on the process of living your life. Now, once we have those goals, the second thing that we need to do is we need to focus on a plan. Because it turns out that almost any wellness goal is way too abstract. I want to have a normal body mass index. I want to have cholesterol under 200. How the heck do you get there? In order to be able to achieve wellness, there have to be specific things you do on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis whose cumulative impact is to get you to the outcome that you desire. All right, that's what you have to do. So you can't even say, I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week, because frankly, when does 3 times a week happen? That 3 times a week doesn't happen. Monday happens, Wednesday happens, Friday happens. You got to get things that are actually going to be on your calendar. So you have to encourage the people around you to create actions that they can perform at a particular time of day, preferably in a consistent way. Because if you act consistently, then you can create habits. The third thing we want to do is to beware of the temptations, not the rock group. They're fine. I don't mind them. But the temptations that are there in our lives. The problem with these temptations is if we're not ready for them, they will still be there and we won't know what to do. So think about, not everyone creates a buffet with the kind of healthy food that we had here today. A lot of times you go to a corporate event and you're piled high full of stuff you don't want to be eating, and mindlessly you walk up to the buffet, get this big plate, put a bunch of stuff on it, and then eat it. You got to be prepared for the buffet, right? I tell everybody, go to the dessert table first, not for the dessert, for the plates. They put the small plates with the dessert. Grab one of those plates while everyone else rushes the buffet line. Go find a table and find one that's as far away from the buffet as you can. Face away from the food so you don't have to see it. Now get up and get online. By this time, everyone else has been online. All the good stuff has been picked over already. Okay, grab a little bit of food on your small plate, mostly vegetable stuff if you can. Okay, then eat. By the time you finish eating, they've cleared the buffet away and you have survived yet another temptation. But you've got to be ready for it in advance, because if you wait until the temptation is there, then quite frankly, you're toast. The fourth thing you need to do is to manage your environment. We do not appreciate how much the environment around us influences our behavior. We are fairly cognitively lazy creatures. We do what is easiest for us to do in the environment that we're in, which means if you're trying to change your own behavior, if you're trying to change the behavior of other people, make desirable behaviors easy and undesirable behaviors hard. That's the principle that we want. That's why you don't want that single-serving carton of Ben & Jerry's in the freezer. It's why you want to change the environment. You want to make fitness available in people's environments so that they do things that will allow them to get more steps in their day. How many of you have ever worn like a pedometer, Fitbit kind of thing? This is kind of a well crowd, yeah. You know, the Surgeon General tells us we're supposed to get 10,000 steps a day. Do you have any idea how many steps 10,000 is? I had no idea before I tried this. It's like 5 miles a day. And when I slapped a pedometer on for the first time, I thought, yeah, I got to be like 11, 12,000 steps a day. And I was like at 6,500, which was stunning. Right? And what that meant was I had to reorient my environment in order to get more steps into my day. Simple things like instead of trying to find the parking space that's closest to the store you're going to, find the parking space that's closest to the entrance of the parking lot. This has two benefits. First of all, you don't spend any time looking for spaces because nobody else is doing that. And second of all, you get a lot of extra steps in. You can actually add 500, 600 steps to your day in a single shopping trip just by parking at the edge of the parking lot. You're making the desirable behaviors easy, the undesirable behaviors hard. Work in a big office building, see if you can get them to slow the elevator down just a little bit. And now, because it's a pain, right? People press that elevator button, they're waiting. It turns out they're only trying to go 2 floors. It's not worth waiting that long. Get on the stairs, right? Little things that you can do to influence the environment that will influence people's behavior. So we got the goals, okay? We're going to create plans related to those goals. We're going to be wary and ready for the temptations. We're going to manage the environment. And then the last thing we need to do is to engage with people. Human beings are a social species, okay? We are not particularly formidable creatures as creatures go. You could go to a local high school, find the biggest linebacker you can, put him up against a bear, and my money's on the bear. Okay? We survive as a species not because we are incredible creatures as individuals. We survive because of the collective efforts that we create. What does that mean for us? It means that the goals that we create are social goals. Goals are very literally contagious. If you see somebody eating well, you will eat well. If you go hang out a couple of blocks from here down on Lady Bird Lake, you can't but help to get up and move. You can't sit down when everybody else is walking and running and biking. That means we need to make people who are fit visible. We need to get people visibly taking walks at lunch. We need to have people visibly walking on the stairs. We need to make the desirable behaviors visible. And we need to create mentors. Why? Because we live in the United States, and American culture is a highly individualist culture. We prize great people who do great things in difficult situations. Well, you know what? If you're trying to change your behavior, there is no prize for having done it alone. We need to engage with other people. If you're trying to lose weight, then find somebody else who's done it and ask for their help. Engage with them. If you want to find out the best ways to act, hang out with the people who have what you want. Because if you engage with people, you are far more likely to achieve the goals that you want to achieve. So here's what I want all of you to do today, okay? You have already heard one great talk, maybe two. I won't say anything about that. But you've heard at least one great talk, and you've got several great ones to continue. But here's the thing. This information you're getting today will be absolutely useless unless you do something with it to change your behavior and to change the wellness of everybody you work with. How are you going to do that? You're going to take that little sheet that I gave you and you are going to take notes. When somebody says something about the goals that you want to achieve, write that down. When somebody talks about ways of creating plans in the workplace to promote wellness, write it down. When somebody talks about how to overcome temptations, write it down. When somebody figures out a great way of influencing that work environment, write it down. And when somebody tells you the great people that you can engage with in order to promote wellness, write that down. And then don't stop there. Take that sheet home, look it over, and create your own plan to do something. Here's my wish for all of you today. When you go home this afternoon, when you get back to the office or go home, make sure that you put at least one and preferably at least two things onto your calendar that you are going to do to promote either your own wellness or the wellness of the people in your organization. Get it onto your calendar today so that things are going to happen in the long term. Have a great conference, and thanks for your time.